Squid Game Season 3 finally arrived on Netflix this past June. But was it good? That's what we're here to discuss today. The thing that I think a lot of people are misinterpreting about this season, which even misled me to a certain point, is that this is not the ultimate grand finale of Squid Game. There's just no way. There's going to be a continuation in the form of an American sequel, and probably spin-offs and so forth. This was just the first ending for the Squid Game series to be continued in a larger Squid Game universe. We'll talk about that more in the spoiler section of this video, but I thought it was worth pointing that out. In this season, Gi-yeon is traumatized. Like, we could see it in his face and the way he behaves. He has lost all hope, and we could see it in his eyes. Was this season better than Season 2? Not sure. I'd say it's about as good. It's certainly still not as good as Season 1, but Season 1 always set a bar that would be hard to top. I think this season maintains the spirit of Squid Game, and we get to see an evolution of Gi-yeon done in an interesting and oddly satisfying way. He's not really the revolutionary leader we were led to expect in Season 2, but he didn't go back to being the underdog bozo he was in Season 1 either. Gi-yeon has become a complex person who has been forever changed by what the Squid Games have done to him. Since he survived all of them up until this point, it's probably fair to assume he has a fair bit of survivor's guilt. As always, the actors in Squid Game do superb jobs with their roles, and here was no exception. The games played were creative and interesting to look at, and made for some intense scenes and jaw-dropping moments. Was this season good though? Yes, but it wasn't what people expected. I think there was a fair amount of rawness and gritty realism in the season that people didn't expect. Additionally, I think the subplot with Detective Hwang Jun-ho was weak and wasteful this season. Conversely, I thought another subplot during the season was done much better and was more satisfying. So in terms of writing and direction, this season was a mixed bag with some weaker choices and some controversial ones thrown in too. It's still a good season, but it won't be everyone's cup of tea. Now onto the spoiler section. It shouldn't be so surprising that at the beginning of the season, Gi-yeon would want to target someone, Dae-ho, for allowing his master plan of breaking out in Season 2 and the revolution he stirred to fail. And then we saw Gi-yeon choke Dae-ho to Seeing Gi-yeon be so brooding, menacing, and unalive a character was an interesting transformation to his character, I thought. If you didn't like seeing this side of Gi-yeon, it is understandable, as no one wants to see their hero commit a vile act. But I think, realistically, it made perfect sense. I think there's only so much trauma a person can take, and your heroes are no exception. The point of this season was to conclude Gi-yeon's story by rounding out his character arc, and I think this was done much better than what we saw of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars The Last Jedi. Whether Gi-yeon was justified in his decision to unalive Dae-ho is left up to the viewer. Another thing that I think people didn't enjoy seeing in this season was the breakup between Junhee and Player 333, which was quite disappointing on a narrative level. It would have been nice to see them make up and reconcile, but if it wasn't for the fact that Player 333 stabbed Player 120 from the back and unalived her in the episode before, maybe he would have stood a chance. Their breakup was very akin to what we see with men and women today, with women brushing guys off easily, but without the context of the guy unaliving someone who saved her life. And Player 333's overall approach to Junhee was turning her off for one reason or another. Perhaps if he had adjusted his approach to her, made her feel safer and more secure, then I'd argue he would have stood a chance of rekindling with her. Their breakup hits home on a relatable level for so many though, so that might be partially why people didn't like this season. Another point of contention, I think, for viewers was having to see the mother unalive her son just so that Junhee and her newborn could survive. This was, of course, very sad and heartbreaking to watch. But we did get a little foreshadowing from the mother warning her son that it was never really in him to unalive someone. She would have preferred him to unalive her, but he was too stubborn and hellbent on unaliving Junhee so that he could break out safely along with his mother. A tragic end for the son, but not entirely surprising either, as the mother knew he was always the sensitive type and he wouldn't have been able to commit the act. So either she had to go or he had to go. It was because of the son's death though that it spurred on the mother to request Gi-yeon to do everything he could to save Junhee and her baby in a final act of desperation. And this final act of desperation just so happened to snap Gi-yeon out of his trauma. The fact that they included a baby being born into this season was something pretty clever and creative, and it helped Gi-yeon to maintain his humanity even after all the trauma and disappointment he went through. And that includes his friend Park Jong-bae, unalived before him in Season 2. Now let's talk about something that I think overall worked in this season without it being controversial or even weak, like the detective's search for the island. Number 11 breaking out player 246 is probably the most interesting subplot of season 3. It goes without saying it's far more interesting than the subplot of Detective Hwang Junho trying to find the island and find his brother, the frontman. Overall, seeing number 11's backstory and her character arc, especially her scenes and dynamics with her superior, whom we learned saved her life, is far more compelling than the subplot of trying to find the island. We even learn how number 11 and her superior were originally from North Korea, and that number 11 seemingly gave up her child to save her life, though this is debunked later on as we learn her child just went missing. Knowing that player 246 is number 11's former co-worker in the amusement park outside of the games, and the fact that she cares to save him for the sake of saving his daughter was just riveting to watch. Another particularly strong point for this season was seeing the dynamic between Gi-hun and the frontman in the scene where frontman summons Gi-hun to give him one opportunity to save himself and the baby in a last-ditch effort. This is one of the best scenes in the entire season, and probably the whole series. It shows the clear differences in morals between the frontman and Gi-hun, and how frontman trying to influence Gi-hun by giving him an easier way out and becoming something like him. It felt almost like the frontman was preparing Gi-hun to become his disciple, but Gi-hun made his own choices and stuck to his own morals in the end. As Gi-hun walks away and the frontman says something like, "Do you still have faith in people?" was so powerful to watch. And Gi-hun even considers frontman's suggestion by slitting the throats of the other players while in their sleep, until he sees the ghost of Saebyuk appear before him to tell him to stop and that he's a good person who wouldn't do this. That was one of the nicer moments of this season as well. Now, back to another weak point of this season. Player 246 escaping the Squid Game island because of number 11 is great and all, but it is kind of cheapened as a bait for Detective Junho as a means to find the island. Hwang Junho is not a bad character, and I like seeing him work together with Gi-hun in season 2, but his character is just not done well this season. I don't know if it's the writing of the season or if they just dragged out his character arc a little too long, but I became annoyed with his character overall in season 3. The only redemption to his character this season was the revelation of the truth about the captain, who was part of the Squid Games after all, and was secretly protecting the island while sabotaging Hwang's mission. Seeing the detective confront the captain about his lies and deception just before he was a satisfying moment, but it was just too little too late at the same time. If we got to see more fleshing out of this revelation, I think that could have been better. Hence, this subplot is the weakest of this season. Number 11's character though was just as good in season 3 as she was in season 2, if not better. Now to talk about the ending. The final standoff between Gi-hun and player 333. Truthfully, I think we all wanted to see 333 redeem himself at the end by taking Gi-hun's offer by saving himself and his baby and allowing Gi-hun to unalive himself. Well, that didn't happen, and it showed his true colors in the end. Thankfully, as fair as Gi-hun has been with people, even he recognized this and told him, "You're not worth that much." So seeing the death of 333 became unexpectedly satisfying. But was Gi-hun's death earned? Well, that is up to you to decide as a viewer. A lot of people feel Gi-hun could have been spared and would have liked to see frontman grow a conscience and stop the games from unaliving Gi-hun. And many people would have also liked to see Gi-hun reconcile with his daughter. These are totally valid reasons, and Gi-hun could have arguably objected to the rules and fairness put in place for the players of Squid Game to himself, since he was the only able player left. I actually would have liked to see frontman stop the games from having Gi-hun unalive himself and reconcile with his daughter. However, I also understand that the creator of the show wanted to end Gi-hun's story arc, and it may have felt dragged on if we saw Gi-hun active on some level in the American spin-off season that's coming. We also wouldn't have gotten the speech Gi-hun recited to the judges and leaving it open-ended with, "Humans are." So while Gi-hun's death is controversial, it's not the worst that's ever been done. It was nice to see some loose ends tied with other characters though, including player 246 surviving and reuniting with his daughter, number 11 getting news that her daughter might still be alive, seeing Saebyuk's brother reunite with their mother after a long time, and having frontman deliver the remains of Gi-hun's winnings to his daughter, leaving it open-ended to her possible involvement in the future season. I'm sure we're going to see more involvement from frontman. His story isn't over yet. It just would have been nice to see Detective Hwang get some more closure with his brother, the frontman, in this season, but we didn't get that. So I can only assume that will be taken care of in the spin-off seasons to come. Overall, it's still a good season, but with some controversies that came along with it. If you like this video, please give it a like, and if you want to see more content like this, then smash that subscribe button. I also have a Patreon, so if you want to catch exclusive content from me that you won't find anywhere else, then please subscribe. I'm Shindiver, and keep watching Asian media.